There's this quiet struggle that a lot of us seem to face. It's that feeling of being constantly in motion. Your calendar's full, your inbox is a mess, but at the end of the day, you have this nagging sense that you haven't really moved the needle on what actually matters. It really brings up that question. Because the modern duel, it isn't fought with swords, right? It's fought every single minute against distraction, against complexity, and just against that constant pull of reactive, shallow thinking. The opponent isn't some other person, it's just the noise that keeps us from real clarity. So what if the path to that clarity didn't come from some new productivity app, but from the final words of a 17th century swordsman? Well, in this Daily Book Insight, we're going to explore Miyamoto Musashi's The Book of Five Rings to find exactly that, a timeless strategy for quiet mastery. Now, to really understand this book, you have to understand the man who wrote it. Miyamoto Musashi was, arguably, the greatest swordsman in Japanese history. But this isn't a collection of fighting techniques. It's a work of deep, personal philosophy that he wrote in his final years. Think about this. Musashi lived a life defined by conflict, over 60 duels, and he was never defeated. But near the end of his life, he didn't write some grand memoir about all his victories. Instead, he retreated to a cave to just distill everything he learned into a guide on strategy itself. This wasn't about bragging. It was about reflection. And this quote, this just reveals the sheer humility at the core of his work. After a lifetime of winning, he basically concluded that his victories didn't even come from a true, deep understanding of strategy. So this book really is his search for that underlying principle, the way, that governs not just a sword fight, but everything. He structured his ideas into 5 scrolls, or what he called rings. So we're going to walk through each one. We'll start with the foundation, which is earth, then move to the adaptability of water, the decisiveness of fire, the perspective of wind, and we'll finish with the intuition of the void. So let's begin with that first one, the scroll of earth. Musashi is really clear on this. Before you do anything, before you learn any technique, you have to have a solid foundation. These are the fundamental principles of your own personal strategy. For him, it was like knowing the terrain before a battle. For us, it's about knowing our core values, our core competencies. It's the stable ground we need to be standing on before we can even decide which direction to move. Without that, any strategy we come up with is, it's just guesswork. He lays out 9 of these core principles, and 2 of them in particular really challenge our modern habits. Number 8, pay attention to trifles. Reminds us that mastery isn't about some grand gesture. It's built from all the small, consistent details. And then there's number 9, do nothing which is of no use. That's a direct antidote to our culture of busyness, forcing us to ask, do my actions actually serve a real purpose? Now, it's really important to be honest here. These principles are often taken and twisted into some hyper-aggressive business context, about crushing your competitors. But Musashi's focus was always internal. The real battle is for self-mastery, for discipline, and for clarity of mind. So to put this into practice, here's a small action. Just look at your week ahead, find one recurring activity that, if you're being honest with yourself, is of no real use. Maybe it's scrolling a particular app or a meeting that could have been an email. Just try reclaiming that time and dedicate it to something that actually builds your foundation. Okay, so once you have that solid ground of earth, Musashi introduces the next element. Because if earth is all about stability, water is all about movement and flexibility. And this makes sense, right? A foundation is pretty useless if it just makes you rigid. So that brings us to the scroll of water, which teaches us that our strategy has to be fluid and responsive, not brittle. This is his big metaphor for this whole section. Your mindset, your tactics, your whole approach, it should be like water. It adapts to whatever container it's in, the situation, but it doesn't lose its essential nature. Sometimes it's a calm trickle, sometimes it's a wild sea, but it's always fluid. But here's the crucial detail that a lot of people miss. This isn't about being formless or having no plan. It's actually the opposite. It's about mastering your fundamentals, those principles from the Earth Scroll, so deeply that you can afford to be flexible. Real adaptability comes from a place of strength, not from a lack of conviction. So to practice this, just try this little experiment. The next time a small plan gets disrupted, you hit traffic, an appointment gets canceled, resist that urge to just force your original plan through. Just pause for a second and intentionally think of 2 other ways you could approach the situation or use that time. It's a small way to train your mind for flexibility. All right, so once we have our foundation and our flexibility, we have to learn when to act. And this is the scroll of fire. It's all about the dynamics of engagement, that moment of conflict, of decision, of action. Musashi says the spirit of fire is fierce. Now, this doesn't mean reckless aggression. It represents the intensity of a decisive moment. It's about seizing the initiative by calmly observing, anticipating the flow of events, and then, when the moment is right, acting with total conviction. A good way to practice this in a pretty low-stakes environment is in your next important meeting. Set a goal for yourself not to be the first person to speak. Instead, just listen. Try to understand the dynamics in the room, the motivations, the unspoken concerns. Your aim isn't just to add your voice, it's to time your contribution for the greatest effect. But of course, decisive action is only effective if we have perspective. And that's why, right after fire, Musashi introduces the scroll of wind. It's all about the importance of understanding strategies and methods that are outside of our own. This scroll is really a direct challenge to any kind of dogma. Musashi would critique other schools of swordsmanship, not to mock them, but to understand them on a deep level. And he asks us to think about whether we're trapped in our own school, our department's way of doing things, our own fixed worldview. And again, this is one of those moments where the book demands some intellectual honesty. Musashi is really clear that the point isn't to just copy what other people are doing. It's about understanding their methods so you can see the strengths and weaknesses in your own. True mastery comes from refining your own unique path, not from just imitating someone else's. So an actionable way to apply this is to find a colleague, maybe in a different department, sometime this week. Ask them to just walk you through their process for a task that you both interact with. But here's the key. Don't offer suggestions, don't critique, just listen, with the single goal of understanding their world. Which brings us to the final and most profound scroll. This is where all the other principles, foundation, flexibility, timing, perspective, all of it culminates. This is the scroll of the void. Now, the void, or ku, is often misunderstood. People think it means emptiness or nothingness. But for Musashi, it's a state of pure potential and clarity. Think of it like a master musician. They've practiced their skills for years. That's earth. They can improvise. That's water. They know when to play loud or soft. That's fire. And they've listened to countless other musicians. That's wind. Well, when they finally perform, they're not thinking about the notes anymore. The music just flows through them. That state, beyond conscious effort, that's the void. From my own experience, this state doesn't just arrive like a lightning bolt. It's usually preceded by a struggle. I remember wrestling with a huge project decision, just drowning in spreadsheets and pro-con lists. I'd analyzed it from every single angle, but the answer just felt further away. The clarity didn't come from more data. It came late one night after I'd finally just put it all away and sat with the problem, letting go of the need to solve it right then. And this quiet knowing, it just emerged. I think that's a glimpse of what Musashi calls the void. It's not about being empty-headed, it's about having a mind so prepared that it can finally be still. And that's really the heart of it. Musashi teaches that true strategy isn't about knowing what to do next. It's about becoming the person who knows what to do. It's a shift from just collecting techniques to truly cultivating your being. And when you look at it that way, it's not just a philosophy for swordsmen, is it? It's a strategy for living a more deliberate and effective life. So let's just bring it all together. The Earth Scroll teaches us to build a foundation by removing what's useless. The Water Scroll teaches adaptability by finding alternative approaches. Fire teaches decisive timing through active listening. Wind teaches perspective by understanding others. And finally, the Void teaches us to trust our intuition by cultivating moments of quiet. And this takes us right back to where we started. The ultimate goal isn't to be busier. It's not to learn more tricks. It's about stripping away the non-essentials so we can achieve a state of clarity, a state where being effective becomes less about effort and more about instinct. If there's one thing worth remembering, real growth begins when an idea is quietly applied, not loudly admired. If you found this insight valuable, feel free to like it and subscribe to Daily Book Insight for more. You can also download a free action plan that summarizes these steps from the link in the description. Thank you for joining us.